What was thinking would be cool is over this weekend, I had a text friend of mine in the music world who is an advertising executive that I think he said he was, making six figures working for a company and then broke out a couple years ago and now has, tripled his income, but is kind of looking, he's got a birthday, kind of a milestone birthday coming up. And he's like, I want to retire in 15 years. And then I was driving through the gates to one of the places that you and I have lunch when we're. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Business Lunch with your hosts, Ryan Dice and myself, Roland Frasier. Ryan, how you doing today?
So freaking good. How are you doing?
I am also doing quite well. It is a bit rainy. I would prefer it not to be that, even though the responsible human in me says we need water always here in California. But when it comes, you're like, maybe it could just rain at night and then be all dried up in the morning. That would be ideal.
Yeah, you're not allowed to complain about rain in Southern California. It's a desert.
Dude, you know what? It's so funny. We had my mother-in-law out here who left this morning, and you forget how the weather is. I mean, I forget how the weather is in the rest of the world because she flew out into ice storms in Michigan where her flights were canceled and there's no gas in the town she lives in. And I mean, it's like you just forget about it. And then you complain. You're like, God, it's sprinkling today. They're like, I can't get gas. I can't get to my house. It's like, so, and I know you've run into that now that the cold weather has moved down to Texas. So,
well, thankfully we're done with all that. What we're going to be dealing with here in another month or two is 158 degree temperatures. So that's instead what we're going to be dealing with.
Colder and warmer. I don't understand.
We're really good at both. Yeah. Just good at the extremes.
What I was thinking would be cool is over this weekend, I had a text friend of mine in the music world who is an advertising executive that I think he said he was, making six figures working for a company and then broke out a couple years ago and now has, tripled his income, but is kind of looking, he's got a birthday, kind of a milestone birthday coming up. And he's like, I want to retire in 15 years. And then I was driving through the gates to one of the places that you and I have lunch when we're here at Rancho Valencia. And the guy at the gate said, yep, just 11 more years and then I can retire. And both of them were thinking about, how do I do that? And not the guy at the gate, but the other guy asked me, this weekend, he said, what would you do? What do you think I should do? And so I thought it'd be kind of interesting to talk about anybody who is consuming this podcast that is interested in how could I accelerate my time to financial independence, whether you want to retire or not. How can I increase my income most rapidly? How can I increase my net worth most rapidly, or wealth generally? What would we recommend to do that? I thought that'd be kind of fun. So I'm going to pose that to you and see what your thoughts are, and then kind of share what I thought as well. I'm guessing they're going to be fairly close.
Would you describe this as individual investment advice that we're offering here?
I would say it's specific financial advisory advice. No, definitely none of those things. We are not RIAs or any other licensed professionals. This is strictly for entertainment purposes only.
Yeah.
Follow at your own risk. Consult a licensed professional. How's that?
I like it. So if you're okay with it, I'm going to operate under the assumption that we're giving advice to entrepreneurs, or at least people who are open to, they're entrepreneurial minded. Because yeah. I honestly don't know what to tell somebody who is merely a wage earner and they have no interest whatsoever in alternative investments.
I think that's
because I don't know what to do.
I guess that's a really good point. And the best advice I've ever heard there is the magic of compound interest, and take your money and get into S&P index and
right.
Hope things continue to go well there, and you'll probably do great.
Yeah, exactly. Like you probably should do that. And I'll tell you, like if you're at a job and the job offers a 401k, then, and there's matching, that's called free money. So you should do that. You should take that. That's tax advantaged. Fill all
How
those
many
suckers
people
up.
don't do that? It just boggles the mind. You'd almost be better to do it. Like if you needed the money, if you're like, I can't do it because I need the money. I bet if you did the math, this would actually be fun math to do. I might do this. If you did the contribution, took the match, and then took the penalty to take it out early, I bet you'd be ahead.
Yep.
Never thought
You
about
probably
that.
would. And if you just contributed the money, you probably would adjust your lifestyle
Yeah.
so that you just learn to live without it.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what everybody does. So yes, if you've got a job, you should be doing that. And then you should be figuring out, how do I set aside at least 10% into investments? I mean, we're talking about classic financial investing
Buckets of money.
advice. Yeah, exactly.
10% to do good, 10% to save, 10% to treat yourself because otherwise you're living a miserable life, and then the rest is what you live off of.
Treat yourself. Yes. So I don't know how to offer anything better than that for just kind of your standard person. So as we think about entrepreneurs,
Isn't
really
it funny though? I did not think to make that distinction, and because I think so much like an entrepreneur that I'm like, of course everybody would want to do this, but it's absolutely true, and it's okay if you don't. So if you're listening to it, to this, the rest of it will be, for your amusement of crazy people like Ryan and me, and most entrepreneurs. But that's actually a really good. I'm glad that you mentioned that.
Well, this is business lunch. So if you're not an entrepreneur and you're listening to this, I welcome. I don't know why, but I'm glad you're here. So as as entrepreneurs, how should we approach investing? Because I do think it's different for us. We can approach it from an entrepreneurial mindset, and I'm a big believer in the barbell concept. So I like the idea of
Absolutely.
ultra no-brainer, mega super conservative. For me, what that does mean is I do still put money in, stocks and have some in the market. I'm fine with that. I keep a lot in cash, but then what I'm looking for, and I also will take outsized bets on crazy stuff. So I will take some percentage, and it could be 2%, it could be 4%, but I have what I call a FOMO fund. It is my fear of missing out fund. It is I'm just going to, and if I've got some extra money, I'll take a percentage of it. Like I said, it could be 2%, could be 4%, kind of however I'm feeling, and I'll throw it in my FOMO fund. And so if there's an opportunity where a buddy comes along and he's like, hey, you should throw some money at this thing called Bitcoin, which thankfully a buddy of mine did back in 2008. And I'm like, what's Bitcoin? He said, don't worry about it. Just throw some money at it. And I did, because I happen to have some money. That worked out, right? Now, there's been other times where people have said, you should throw some money at this, and it went immediately to zero. But now I'm never worried about, that fund has actually made me money in the stupid decisions I didn't make, because I was able to kind of just scratch that itch. Yeah. And I think as entrepreneurs, we need to have just a little bit aside where we let ourselves scratch that itch, but only to a certain extent. So I've got the little bit of stuff that goes over here. I've got the bulk of my stuff that goes into cash equivalents and stocks. I've got the little tiny bit, 2 to 4% that's going to go in the FOMO fund. And then the rest of it, I'm looking to make investments into private companies. That's what I'm looking to make. And and we can go into that. I'll just kind of stop there, and we can get into the details of these, but that's my general investment mix.
Yeah, I like it. As you know, I'm very similar. One thing that I think is good to talk about with respect to these private investments is my suggestion, and my philosophy is to only go into existing companies that are already successful. And if I did a lot of turnaround work where I went into companies that were faltering and turned them around. And if you want a giant challenge and have a lot of experience and are okay with, with that, that is a way to go. But if you don't have that experience, I'd recommend you stay away from turnarounds as well, because there's so many businesses that are already existing, already have a history, have already proved themselves, have product market fit, have profitability, have sales teams and employees and everybody else, suppliers in place, that to me, it makes no sense to go into a turnaround situation. The other alternative would be venture capital. And I had a dinner here at my house. My wife was out of town on a girls' trip last week, and I had a dinner with three friends, all of whom you know, and they were talking about a couple of different investments that they'd made in like venture startup type things. And one of them was a space thing that was going to use giant rubber bands to basically sling satellites into space, and it was this amazing technology and had all this great proof and everything. But it was a startup, and several of them invested in it, and they were talking about other investments, and there were a lot of losses in almost all of the things. And I've seen that so many times where people are betting venture bets. Venture bets, they don't work out most of the time. I think it's lower than a 10%.
And when they do, it's like a 10 to 20 year payback.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my FOMO fund. Just so you know,
Yeah.
venture bets, venture capital, VC for me, that is just like I'm going to buy the latest meme coin for funsies.